yes, I am the one who made a certain choices. We talked about choices recently, you and I. We make those choices, but with alcohol or with anything that's addictive, at some point it takes over.
Makes the choice for you.
It makes
you
it.
Can't put it down.
No, because when you are addicted, your body has to have it.
Well, I am super excited about today's podcast. There's a guy that's been in my life for, matter of fact, we counted it up, 27 years that I've been hanging around Staton West. Staton and I met in Korea in the military, and we've been fast friends ever since. We've gone through so many aspects of life. And I'm telling you, this is one of the coolest stories of a fall and of redemption, and aviation's intertwined throughout the entire thing. And I just think you're going to really enjoy the story of Staton West. And my hope is, as you listen to the story of Staton, is that you'll hear the potential of yourself in that story. You might hear of a place where you might think, I can relate to Staton. And if that's so, then we've done exactly what I hope this podcast will end up being. I want to introduce you to Staton West. Staton, welcome
Joe.
to the Malibu Guru podcast and the Casey Aviation YouTube channel.
It's amazing to be here.
You know,
Thank you so much.
Not to be a weirdo and everything, but literally it's been years that we've been talking about, I got to get you in the studio. Yeah. I got to get you here.
Yeah.
We finally did.
No, I know. It's great.
It's a wonderful thing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about you, when you talk about me, I've got a lot of friends that I know in the military. I've got very, very few that I still stay very connected with. You're one of the guys.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're
same here.
Yeah, one of the. I've got a lot of acquaintances in the military, but I don't have a lot of people that I've stayed really super close with all the time. I can think of 3 off the top of my head, and I think that you're on a real short list. There's people that I think are really cool people from my past, and just where we've done a lot of different things throughout the years. And anyway, welcome to the Malibu
Thanks, Joe.
podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's. I think about it often. You know, you are among my count 'em on one hand closest friends, and not only are you my aviation mentor, but over the years, because of life and experiencing life on life's terms as we have. We developed this relationship that's more than just about airplanes, and it's more than just about the military or whatever. And so that's why I'm very honored and privileged and happy to just be here to talk to you and tell my story.
Yeah, so. You know, one of the fun parts about those, it's not like I'm mentoring you. There's been times in our lives where I've mentored you and you've mentored me.
Exactly.
It's like a thing where there's a very equitable position as we look at each other. I mean, right now is for sure. Yeah. But it's always been where there's been times in my life where I've been in the dumps, and there's been times in your life where you've been in the dumps, and we've both been there for each other. Yeah. And that's kind of, I hope everybody in the world has a friend like that, because that's really, I mean, that's what, I mean, I think that's one of the most important things you can say is I got a friend that was there when I was down in the dumps. And so.
Absolutely.
And you've been down in the dumps a couple times.
I have. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk about your story.
Sure. Well, as I told you earlier, if I am to give an introduction, who am I? I would say my name is Staton West, child of God, proud father, loving father, dad to 2 beautiful boys, recipient of grace, and a grateful recovering alcoholic.
There we go.
There you go.
There you go. That's a great list right until you get to the part about the alcoholic. And but it has its place, doesn't it?
It does.
It has its place, and it has a place to come from. Let's go back to the days when we first met, and then let's go from where we went from there. So let's go back to Korea, because I showed up in basically at Camp Humphreys in Korea. Yeah. And we got to meet each other there. Cool place. I'm a W-2. You were a
second lieutenant.
There you go. It was your first assignment out of, what was it, Medical Service Corps?
Well, flight school. I mean, I went to
flight school directly there.
Yeah, I went through Medical Service Corps Officer Basic course in San Antonio, and then to Fort Rucker Flight School, and then
first assignment straight to Korea.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I had been in the military already. I'd been to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we got there and we made friends quickly. And we both flew you were my boss, actually, like a section leader or a platoon leader or something.
Forward support medical team, FSMT or something like that.
You're on one of my OERs. You wrote good about me, so it's good. But it was fun. Korea was kind of a cool place to be, especially maybe for a first assignment. It was kind of, it was, for me, it was my first assignment as like I had gone to Fort Campbell, went to UH-60 Black Hawk instructor pilot school, and showed up to Korea as my first assignment as an instructor pilot, never having flown medevac. I had flown air assault stuff. So when I got to Camp Humphreys in Korea, which is south of Osan Air Base, south of Seoul, it was a fun time, and
it was a very different time in Korea. Yes. I mean, it was still sort of, what do you say, second, third world in a way. Like yes, for me, I mean, yes. First time living abroad, and I knew early on that I wanted to go to Korea. I just had this, I wouldn't say a calling, but I had this vision of going early on in my career. So.
And it's not hard if you want to go to Korea, because not everybody wants to go to Korea, but the military needs a lot of people to go to Korea.
Back then,
so if you put your hand up and say, "I'll go to Korea," then okay, well, here you go. You're going to get. You know what's interesting about Camp Humphreys is my dad was based in Camp Humphreys, Korea, in 1968, and matter of fact, when I was born, my dad was in Camp Humphreys, and there's some pictures of Camp Humphreys of my dad standing next to the Jeep, next to the Quonset hut with the mountain in the background. Wow. And while I was at Camp Humphreys, I went back and found sometimes I found the Quonset hut and found the mountain, figured out what it was, and kind of tried to take the same picture when my dad was, back then. But it wasn't real hard to do this because Camp Humphreys in the day was still a bit of a backwoods.
Yes.
I mean, it was not a prime place. It was not a place that was, it was on the map, but it wasn't really on the map in terms of, it was a small base. I mean, we had we have an Anthony's Pizza and a Burger King was your
Robin Hood sandwiches.
Robin Hood sandwiches. That was pretty much all you had, while you're there. It wasn't, if you wanted to do anything fun or exciting, you were going to Osan Air Base. Right. And going there, because Osan was a whole lot bigger. The running joke that we had back then, I don't know if you remember this, but to show the difference between the Army and the Air Force, the Army comes in and builds the runway.
Yes.
Builds, lines it with Quonset huts and then says, well, where are we going to put all our people, and where are they going to shop, and where are they going to live? Mm-hmm. And the Army's like, well, they'll figure that out. The Air Force comes in and builds the PX and this really nice housing facilities and everything, and doesn't build the runway.
Right.
And they go, well, where are you going to fly the airplanes? And they're like, well, you're going to have to build the runway. And so, in other words, the idea behind it is the Air Force got their priorities straight.
Right.
And the Camp Humphreys was literally nothing more than one big gigantic runway with a bunch of little things all around it that were really
very dilapidated.
Quonset huts, nothing nice. Today, if you go to Camp Humphreys today, I was over Camp Humphreys a year ago, couldn't land there, but I was over it in a King Air on my way to China, and I flew over Camp Humphreys. Camp Humphreys is the largest military base outside of the continental United States.
It just blows my mind that that's the case.
It blew it up. Camp Humphreys is nothing of what it used to be. It is today huge, enormous. But whenever my dad was there in 1968, and when we were there in 1998, so we're talking 30 years after my dad. We're talking about 30 years ago from when we were there. It was 27 years ago.
Yeah,
when we first met there. It was not the place it was, but it was kind of a cool place for us to be because we got to fly some pretty cool missions.
Yeah, no, we did, and then I went back and served in Seoul in 2006 to 2008. So I actually got to see Korea, 8 years later, eight to 10 years later, and completely different world.
South Korea is, if you looked at it from when we looked at it in 98 to when you saw it again, I was there. I landed in South Korea a year ago. I was blown away at the advancements of that country. You talk about a country that's absolutely on the rise, doing extremely well, still with North Korea sitting right there, with this swamp of existence, I guess you'd say, and a completely different lifestyle from a North Korean to a South Korean. But I mean, and you can see it when you fly over it. It's a huge difference between the two. But South Korea is really an up and coming country, really doing well.
I don't want to jump ahead, but I will say this because we're talking about Korea. I remember probably in 2007, 2008, on the DMZ running the expert field medical badge competition. I was in charge of running that event, and I was standing on a mountain ridge, one side overlooking South Korea, the other side overlooking North Korea. But I was talking to my family in Washington State with 5 bars of reception on my flip phone. And I remember thinking to myself, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah.
Like standing on a mountain ridge with full cell phone reception, and on one side of me is North Korea, the other side South Korea. The same thing happened to me not long ago when I'm sitting in what we call the Marion Industrial Club at an AA meeting, thinking to myself, how the hell did I end up here? It's just funny how life brings you to these places that you just think, oh my gosh, didn't expect this, but it's all good.
That's
Anyway.
That's part of life though. If you look back in my life, and you look 5 years back, if I would look 5 years forward, the place that I thought I would be 5 years from then, every time it was different.
Yeah.
Like I totally blew the forecast of where I would be in life, but here we are, and it's good. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
And for you, when I left Korea in '99, I went on to places that you didn't go. You went to other places, got deployed or not deployed, but reassigned to other places. But it wasn't long after that, till September 11th, 2001 occurred. Your life changed, because I will tell you, there's people in the military that served. I'm one of the guys that have served. I've done a few things, but I'm telling you, there's people that shouldered the weight. And you're one of the guys. Your family was one of the families that shouldered the weight because you were just deployed all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about soldiers that took it on the chin. It just seems like you'd be over in Iraq, you'd be over in Afghanistan, you'd be away, you'd come back home, and it wasn't long before you were, for whatever reason, going back again.
Yeah. Well, it's very common, and I'm very much guilty of it as well, to downplay or to say, well, I really didn't do that much because I didn't deploy as much, or I didn't get injured, or I didn't lose a whole lot.
The other guy took a bullet.
The other guy did more, and that's typical of all of us soldiers, is to compare, and that can be, it's a rational thing, but it's sort of a dangerous thing too, because you really shouldn't compare, because this is my story.
That's right.
It's my story. This is what happened to me. I don't need to explain myself or explain what happened to other people. This is my story. So it is. It's just what it is.
It is what it is. But I'm telling you right now, you deployed a lot.
We did. I did. Yeah.
You were gone just a gob. And when I say that to people, everything that comes along with that, with a gob of deployments comes time away from the family. Right. Talk about movements of logistics and administrative stuff. Your life basically is put on pause. But I was deployed to Bosnia once, and as my big one. I've been to Germany and Korea and a few other places, but you really took it on the chin as far as being deployed, and I think that plays into this story.
Sure,
I think that you were one of the guys that really did a lot for our nation. Really did a lot for you wore the uniform, and we all did. Right. But boy, you got deployed a lot. Talk to us about what it's like to fly a helicopter in Iraq.
Well, for my part, I really didn't fly a whole lot because I was a staff officer. And so you know how it works with staff officers. We don't get to do a whole lot of flying. But
And the key is you were commissioned officer, and commissioned officer means you fly in your early days and you fly a desk later in life.
Right. So I was the sort of a senior captain at the time, medical service corps officer working in an aviation branch battalion, general support. So I wasn't flying medevac. And then I was for the majority of the time, I was the night battle captain for our battalion. So just a lot of that staff work. But occasionally I would go out and fly. But at that point, really, we were flying, well, I think we called it the Taji Express or the Baghdad Express or whatever. We were just basically flying sort of a shuttle service at that point. Things had sort of calmed down during OIF 3, the time 2005 that I was there. But so for me, the flying, to be honest, was lesser and actually kind of boring compared to what I had done in my medevac days. My medevac flying at Fort Hood, as you remember, at Fort Rucker, flying Hueys was much more exciting. But it was. I did my job. My job was to be the staff officer, but as far as flying, and that I'm more of an aviator at heart than I am the staff guy. So
that's why you're sitting here.
That's why I made some of the career decisions that I made. But no, but it wasn't. The flying was not the difficulty in that was being away. First deployment, first time in a combat zone where indirect fire happens or others were getting shot. And friends. I had actually a guy that served with us or may have served after you left Fort Hood. Took around, and I had his breastplate sitting under my desk, for a few months after he got hit before they took it for ballistic testing. So it's just, you're in that environment and you just never know. But as you know, my oldest son, Isaac, was born. And actually it was on my first flight, my first mission over there, combat mission. It was an actual general lift mission. It wasn't the shuttle, but so my very first flight outside of the confines of the airbase was the day that my son was born. And I got a call on the way back saying, tell Captain West.
Congratulations.
Well, it said, tell him to get on the phone as soon as he gets on the ground, call home. And sure enough, Kirsten was in labor with Isaac, and he was born several hours after that. But and that has a whole nother story that goes with it. So, but I think the most difficulty and sort of acute sort of trauma of not being there when Isaac was born was just that feeling of, I hope I get to hold him, Yes. And my prayer became, God, just let me hold him once. And if I get blown up after that, so be it. I just want to hold him one time, And that was hard. And it becomes more heartbreaking for me to tell it years and years later. Like, I have more compassion and empathy for myself telling the story later. I kind of get a little choked up about it because, wow, that was hard,
Right.
And then it was very hard for Kirsten to be alone, to not have me around. And she felt very alone, just, going through all of the postpartum difficulties and the colicky baby and all that stuff. She went through essentially alone. I mean, she had some family and some friends, but that was a huge challenge. So,
when a soldier deploys, it goes away. That's not the only person that's deploying or going through a tough time.
Right.
The family goes through tough times.
Right.
And a lot of times, again, it's not the person that's getting shot in the foxhole, or shot at in the foxhole. There's a whole, everybody's deploying.
Right.
And everybody's everybody's paying a price for you to be there and for us to be over there. And you and your family paid a price for that.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
There's a place somewhere along in here where you said, I am doing really good as far as a commissioned officer, but I got to get back to the cockpit.
Yeah.
I remember us having talks about that.
Oh, sure.
And you made a kind of a hard choice to go to being a warrant officer.
Right. So when I left Savannah, which was the unit with which I deployed to Iraq the first time. And after that, I was assigned to return to Korea, basically to work in one of the evacuation battalions that no longer had aircraft. So I had to be a ground evac staff officer. And that lasted for a year because they eventually shut down that battalion. And then I moved to work in the hospital at the in Yongsan, the 121 Cash Combat Support Hospital, and it later became the Brian Allgood Army Community Hospital, I think is what it was called. And absolutely hated that job.
Right.
Just was miserable. Was not in my element. I was just miserable. Excuse me. And so it was during that time that I just really wanted to go fly again. And I had already been through the Army fixed wing course, the C-12 course. So I was already rated in the King Air, the C-12. And basically my service obligation was up. I was a free agent. So I called up the branch manager and I said, hey, this is me. I don't owe you anything, but I have this to offer. I want to go be an instructor pilot in airplanes in Germany. And he said, yes, yes, and yes.
Wow.
And I didn't sleep for 3 days. My world completely changed, and there you go.
Yeah,
and with a stroke of a pen, I think I got a little bit of pushback from the Medical Service Corps, branch manager who was. He didn't care. He's like, "What can I do to keep you in the Medical Service Corps?" I'm like, "Well, nothing. This is no harm, no foul. This is just what I want to do." So, made that decision. I think a month later, I was a W-1. Stayed a W-1 for like 2 months, and then became W-2.
It's interesting because about the same time that you were making the transition from a commissioned officer to a warrant officer, I was a warrant officer making the transition to a commissioned officer, right, which is equitably different than everybody else.
Yeah, weird.
I was going to come up. It's kind of funny in the Guard and Reserve. Commissioned officers will advance, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, not make lieutenant colonel, not have a slot, and they want to keep serving. And they're part-timers. They're, weekend warriors, which is great. I think it's one of the greatest positions out there in the world is our reserve and guard people that serve there. But they'll revert back, but they revert back to a CW2 and then work their way up. So the Guard and Reserve has a whole bunch of warrant officers in there that used to be commissioned officers.
Right.
And that's fairly normal. Regular Army, I'd never even heard of this.
Well, very rare. Yeah. It was a rare occasion. I think I knew of one other person who had done it. But yeah, so I just remember, it being a very easy decision, and the reason why is because I've told people this many, many times. I can give you the names of, 5 people right now, the people that were my mentors. Joe Casey, Steve Black, Rodney, and just those folks that I looked up to them. Mike Flynn was one of them.
Am I making a dumb decision here or not?
Right. I want to be like them. I want to be like you. Aviator extraordinaire, and in my eyes is how I saw it. So it was really easy. And then looking back, I'm proud of the fact that number one, I had the support. Kirsten supported that 100%. But I'm proud of the fact that I was able to look and see what everybody else was doing, and then go the exact opposite direction. I just could not follow my cohorts, my medical service corps cohorts, into the track that they were doing because it just looked miserable.
Right. And not related to aviation.
Right. Very, very little had to do with aviation.
As you moved up, you moved further and further away from the cockpit, right, and you jumped off that, went to a warrant officer's track, basically, became a warrant officer. Mm-hmm. That led you right back to the cockpit.
Yep, absolutely.
And brilliant decision. You look back on that one. Do you ever think, what was I thinking?
No, not at all. I mean, it was again, I look back and just think, yeah, right on. I did that. I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud that I was able to join those ranks. And I mean, I kind of weaseled my way into it. I never went through walk, but
Didn't need to. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, so it wasn't real worn, because I didn't roll my socks or whatever. But no, I was just proud to be among those ranks. And again, my closest friends are warrant officers.
That's right.
And they're all, United Airlines pilot now. So
yeah, they've all progressed.
They've done just fine.
They're doing, yeah,
They're fine.
But for you, that decision to become a warrant officer, also took with it, you're now going back. You're going back overseas.
Oh yeah. So lots of time away, and as you remember, Kirsten was a medical professional. She had to maintain her license and credentials. She had to work. She couldn't just follow me willy nilly wherever I wanted to go. So there was a lot of separation, a lot of deployments, a lot of great opportunities. I think within a year or 18 months, I was off to instructor pilot course, which I wanted to do. And then a year after that, I was going to the instrument examiner course. And so, I mean, I worked hard. I did the best I could. And I had a lot of great mentorship and a lot of great people who, believed in me enough to take a chance on me. And I'm forever grateful for that. And so yeah, that time in Germany was, to this day, just the greatest, my greatest military experience, memories, fondness for those people, for that command. It will never leave me. I still brief and approach the exact same way that we were taught to brief and approach in that particular unit. And I guarantee you, every other person who's been through that unit does the same. So very standardized, very professional, and we just had a great group of people. And so those 4 years in that particular unit in Germany, hands down, the best time of my life. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then when you left Germany, where'd you go?
Well, to my final assignment in the Army was at USAPAT. So U.S. Army Priority Air Transport, the battalion at Joint Base Andrews, or Andrews Air Force Base, for those who aren't keeping up with the times. Like Andrews Air Force Base is really how I remember it the most. But yeah, so it was, again, one of those opportunities that I'm very blessed to have.
An elite unit or elite mission, I would say.
Elite mission. But again, that unit in Germany prepared me for that. A lot of the folks who served in Germany, in Wiesbaden, ended up going to USAPAT. And so I was a known entity, and I knew a lot of people there. And it was a nominative process, but thankfully I had folks who were willing to take a chance on me, and so I hope I didn't screw that opportunity up too much, but because it was a tough assignment.
Right.
Yeah, it was really tough, and things if I look back, really started to, once we moved back from Germany and we moved back into that hornet's nest of the DC metro area, and picking up, you in the military. And I think that's really what I'm looking back on, it was just 150 mile an hour freight train to another. There was never downtime,
always going, always.
You're either preparing to go, or just getting back and trying to reintegrate, and then you get reintegrated, and then you got to get ready to go again. And so it was just, we had been in Germany so long, 6.5 years. My youngest son was born there. Had some wonderful times and had some really rough times in our personal lives. But the move back to the States, although we knew it was time and it was exciting and it was a great opportunity, unbelievable privilege to do what I did, to be one of the pilots, primarily for the Chief of Staff of the Army and for the Secretary of the Army, and then lots of others who sort of fall in or qualify for that category of transport, for Gulfstream.
You flew a lot of dignitaries and some really great equipment.
And we did it all over the world. We took that airplane into the Far East, Europe, Pacific. But it was a lot, and it took a toll on me and my family, my marriage, and it was the start of a very difficult path. And I didn't know it at the time. Like, I didn't know to what extent. I thought I was just dealing with it, and thought I was being pretty crafty in how I dealt with things. But I wasn't.
And just the emotional weight of it, is that what you mean?
Well, not just the emotional, it was just the stress of it all, the stress to perform, the just the commute, just the driving in DC, just slugging through that, keeping up with 3 different aircraft types, going to recurrent every 6 months, going on these long trips, planning, trips at a moment's notice, and then of course we were having to do all the other silly office work in the Army,
all the regular Army.
The online training, the DTS, all those things. But then things were not going well at home either. So, but I'll say this: I remember waking up probably about 2 years into that assignment and looking at Adam, who was about 3 years old, maybe not quite 3, and realizing that I could not remember the last 2 years of his life. So from the time that we got to Andrews, I just couldn't remember, like little things. And that was not right. That was not good. So it was then and there, I can't. It was supposed to be a 4-year assignment. I'm like, I can't do this. So put in my retirement paperwork.
Put in your retirement paperwork and decided, okay, I'm leaving this job that I'm at. Mm-hmm. I'm leaving the military, and I'm going where? Where did you end up going?
Basically, I told Kirsten, my wife at the time, I said, you pick where we go. And she went to school in Rochester, Minnesota. We had some ties to the Midwest, and her sister was living in Cedar Rapids, and we had visited there and enjoyed it, liked it. Reasonable cost of living, good schools, Midwestern, nice people. Yep. And so we ended up moving out there.
Yep. And you went to work where?
I went to work for a Part 135 operator, flying a Citation XLS. Really thought that was going to be a good fit for a good while, longer than it ended up being. I really enjoyed flying that airplane. The schedule wasn't great, but I enjoyed the people, the owners of the aircraft that we were flying. But I found myself flying like old, Citation Bravos, which were, there was 3 or 4 of them, and they were all different. And I couldn't remember, how to go from one FMS to the next, and which routes I could fly based on the certifications. It was just too much, and the schedule wasn't great, and I was starting to voice my displeasure with the situation, and so that was one where the chief pilot's like, probably best that you move along.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is not for you.
Right. Well, I mean, I was coming up on a year needing recurrent in the Citation, $15,000 recurrent. And I was becoming a liability in that sense that I was not happy, So they didn't fire me, but I certainly, they were gracious enough to say, probably best that you move along, sort of deal.
Yeah. And where'd you move along?
To like 3 months of unemployment. I had no idea.
And were things getting rough at this point?
They were. So in the meantime, Kirsten and I separated, and basically had filed for divorce. Things were pretty rough. And this, I would say, probably around that time is when, going through that and then dealing with lots of other sort of a barrage of personal issues is, I had this so-called freedom to just numb it all away.
And did you? And is this when the drinking really cranked?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, had my own place, no accountability when I didn't have the kids, but I mean, it really, I had started, sort of numbing and trying to hide, when I was still on active duty. I was always very careful and, thinking I was being really crafty. I mean, I had my own breathalyzer, that I would keep in my flight bag. And probably the worst mistakes I'd ever made was ever buying that stupid thing. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I was doing all I could. I was using all of my faculties to hide that issue because I thought I had it all under control, But to go back to the sort of the career progression, before that employer asked me to kindly leave, I had applied at United, and I got a call back, and they wanted me to continue the process. And so it was, for me, it was all but over. I was done. I'm going to United Airlines. And I took their personality test. It's called the Hogan test. And I'm now learning that each Hogan test is sort of, each airline or each company that has it will sort of pick and choose how they want to steer the questions. And I took the test, and as it turns out, Joe, I'm a much bigger asshole than I thought I was. And they thought they
thought you were too.
And they said, thanks, but no thanks.
And they backed out of the whole thing because of a test.
And I was devastated.
Yes.
I was absolutely devastated.
And this added to the emotional pressure of the whole thing. And the way you numbed this out was
divorce, childhood best friend died unexpectedly from complications, had addiction problems in the past, loss of a job, and then getting the
dream job.
The dream job ripped out. I was kicked in the you know what.
Yeah.
And so, but I explain it this way because it's important. I remember talking to my mother, when I got that news. In fact, I was at my friend's memorial service where I gave his eulogy. It was that day that I received the great news from United Airlines. We want you to continue. A week later or 5 days later, I take the test the very next day. Thanks, but no thanks. And I was devastated. And I was talking, complaining, grieving, whatever to my mother about it. And she said, well, I just think probably 3 months from now, you'll understand why this has happened. Exactly 3 months to the day, I was sitting in dock at Sun Country Airlines.
There you go.
And I tell you, there is a reason, a much bigger reason, and you already know the answer. We'll talk about it, why I'm at Sun Country Airlines. And so it's pretty easy to look back and think, oh, that's why that happened. So yeah. So this, this all happened. I applied to several different airlines, never got the call. I had applied through airline apps, Delta, United. United was the only one. Delta, nothing. I'd always, being a Georgia boy, growing up around Delta pilots in North Georgia,
Figured Atlanta is a good place to be.
Thought it was in my blood. I thought it was my due, that I would be a Delta pilot, and nothing. But Sun Country reached out to me via email right when I retired and right when I took that 135 job, and a lady from HR, and it said, "Hey, we're interested. We'd like for you to continue applying." And I had to write back and say, "Well, I'm sorry. I really don't know that much about your airline, and I just took a job with another outfit. So thank you very much." And I looked on the signature block, and it said, Jennifer Smith or whoever, HR, Sun County Airlines. And so I said, "Oh, and by the way, you might want to check your signature block." I jokingly say that's how I ended up getting a job there, is because of my attention to detail with that. But
Sun Country said yes eventually.
They eventually said yes. I had applied a second time and or reapplied, essentially, put my applications back out there for Sun Country, and they offered an interview, and the other airlines were like Envoy and SkyWest.
Yeah. Good airlines, but not what you were looking for.
Not really what I was looking for, but really I was just looking for a job.
Right.
I needed a job. And Sun Country offered the job, and they had the earliest class date. So it's like, well, I guess that's where I'm going. And I had no idea. I knew nothing about Sun Country. And stepped in that first day, and within hours, I just thought, wow, I've stepped into something pretty special here. Didn't know exactly what, but or why.
The PA-46 world was, I would say, rocked, if that's the right way to say it, because there's a guy named Chad Minnie.
Yeah.
And Chad before you got with Sun Country, Chad Minnie became a first officer with Sun Country.
Actually, he was after.
He was after.
Yeah, right after. Yeah, okay. He's slightly junior. He's a captain now.
He's a captain.
Yeah.
But Chad left the PA-46 world and sold Malibu Aerospace and went to the airlines, and everybody was pretty much like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
But he saw something in Sun Country that was really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
You saw the same thing. In other words, your first day is like, "Wow, this is a cool place.
Yeah.
They've got something cooking here."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, I just I recently saw a post that Chad put on our pilot site on Facebook, and he'd written something like, "I darn near bleed Sun Country," but I know he's a big fan, which I too was surprised after meeting him, and spending time with him with you that one summer, and I was surprised that he would go over to that airline. I didn't know exactly what it was for him, but I'll tell you, for me, it became very clear that there was something special, not just with the business side of things, but it's just a nice group of people that has gone through iterations of leadership, iterations of growth and bankruptcy and coming back,
growth again,
and it was a private company for the majority of its history up until just a few years ago, and it became public. But it was the COO at the time met me at the door when I interviewed, I think it was when I interviewed, and he said, "You're coming in at a phenomenal time in this airline's history," and it's absolutely right. So,
it has proven to be so. Sun Country has been very, very good for you.
Has been phenomenal for me.
Okay.
And a lot of other people in my situation. And I'm very happy to talk about it.
And now let's go down that situation, because there was the drinking continued.
Yeah.
And really, and you got good at covering it up. I to be brutally honest, I didn't know you were drinking.
Yeah.
We're very good friends.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was going down.
Yeah.
You did a great job of hiding it, or you thought you did.
I did until I didn't.
There you go.
And of course I wasn't hiding. I wasn't doing a very good job to my, to Kirsten, who is now my ex-wife, and she was very concerned. I was in denial. And, it's difficult for anyone to say, I was wrong. I admit, I was I was absolutely wrong. But that's part of my recovery is that
Okay.
brutal honesty. And so
Let's talk about the day you had to.
yeah, so the story is I was in a very bad place. Kirsten basically had told me at one point, she said, either you get help or I'm going to get it for you. In a nutshell, was what she was saying. And of course, I was just like, screw you, blah, just I went to denial. Why are you calling me now? I've got to go fly this airplane. And I was mad at her, and I was furious. And she had called my best friend Eric, one of my other of the fives, my other Army best friend, and he's like, don't, Kirsten, don't do this. Just let me talk to him. But ultimately, she called the company.
She called Sun Country.
She called Sun Country. Now, I don't know how it went down, and she's told me her version, and I just have to take it at face value of how that conversation went. But basically, she just said, can you help him? In a nutshell. So it was November 13th, 2022, I believe on a Sunday morning, I get a text. And I was by myself at the time. I'd probably been drinking the night before because I didn't have the boys with me. And the text said something like, hey, Staton, this is Nick. I'm with the Sun Country Hymns Committee. Can you give me a call? Well, I saw that Sun Country Hymns, and I didn't know what hymns really entailed, but I knew what it meant. And it was kind of like little Ralphie in A Christmas Story when he kicks over the hubcap full of lug nuts, F-bomb in slow motion,
Yes.
That. So I got my wits about me as best I could. And 15 minutes later, I called him. Hey, Nick, this is Staton. What's going on? He's like, well, we've had some, reports. And he's like, I just want to give you an opportunity if there's anything you want to talk about or this. And he was sort of being sort of vague. And I'm like, no, what's up? I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'm not kidding anybody. Certainly not even kidding myself. It was ridiculous. So I fought. I fought and fought and fought. Denied, my ex-wife's crazy, whatever, everything. And and so finally Nick had enough of my ranting. He's like, telling me all the great things that had, he'd tell me his story. He's like, well, I've been in the HIMSS program. Here's what I was doing. He listed out, told me a little bit of his story and everything that he was into. And I just thought, dude, you got a problem. I'm not you. I am not you whatsoever. You had a real problem. That's not me. And he finally just said, look, just be honest. Just be honest, Staton, and everything is going to work out. So that gave me pause. That stopped me a little bit. And he said, do you know this other pilot? And he mentioned this pilot by name. I was like, yeah, of course I know. She's a great person. She said, well, she's been through HIMSS. And I had no idea. Just like you didn't know about me, I had no idea about her. And he said, well, she's about to get her medical back. She's doing great. And I thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And
okay, so there's a girl that basically had gone through the HIMSS. She was about to come out of HIMSS, and you thought, what?
Well, First of all, she's a great girl, and she's a one seniority number ahead of me. We were in the same class. And again, I had no idea, just sort of lost track of each other going hither and yon. She was not a local to Minneapolis. So, but yeah, once I learned that she had gone through it, I thought, well, okay, that's it. And it was it wasn't the last, white flag, but it was a bit of a surrender. It was okay. When Nick said, just be honest and it's going to work out. And it was the way he said it too. It was just like, just let go,
Right.
I think I was ready. I was tired of fighting. And that's really what I want to explain too, is that I had a rock bottom, but that did not wake me up. I had a horrible rock bottom, but that did not keep me from drinking, because I still had a lot of fight in me, a lot of denial, a lot of fight. I just about killed myself by drinking too much, put myself in the hospital. My oldest son had to call the ambulance day after Christmas. It was horrible. I hate that's what happened and what my kids had to see. A big regret, but that did not keep me from drinking. It did for a little bit. And basically, because I just saw it, I was like, well, that was stupid. Won't do that again. But I was not.
It would never registered. I've got a real problem. I can't control. I can go back to covering up and guide and
right. Yeah. It was like, I'm smarter than this. Like, that was stupid. I made a stupid mistake. And honestly, anybody could make that mistake. Like anybody could just, I never had a DUI. I never had any legal trouble, but I ended up in the hospital with almost twice the amount of alcohol that should have killed me in my system. But that didn't stop me. What it was just that surrender. I was exhausted, could not do it anymore. A very notable neuropsychologist spoke once at one of the conferences that I attended for this HIMSS program, and he said, pilots in particular, we use the same skills and intelligence and problem solving that we use to fly airplanes to conceal our drinking.
Yeah, you're very, very good at it.
Yeah, we're crafty, sneaky, but out of necessity. Not as a deviant, but just like it's just something we have to do.
Right. And you hit a place of just. I think, would it be safe to say, before you knew about HIMSS and before you knew all about, you knew that if I walk up to a cockpit drunk, I'll lose my job.
Oh yeah, of course.
And was there an element of, okay, here's a path to keeping my job and letting this out?
It was. So, I told you about the breathalyzer that I had for years.
Tell me, because I don't even understand that. Like, what do you mean a breathalyzer tells you, like you would be able to breathe into this and see what your alcohol level is?
Yeah, just like what you'd get on if you were pulled over on the side of the road.
So you could basically drink to that point and then stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or beyond that point, and then calculate, how much time you would need
until the next drink.
Until you're illegal.
Oh, got you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like I had that, I had my own. And then Kirsten, my ex at the time, she said she wanted me to have one. So I was like, oh, sure, I'll go get one. I'd already had one,
gotcha.
And, I'd had one for a couple of years because I was, I didn't want to.
One of the triggers could be if somebody's listening to this and you got a breathalyzer in your bag, you're probably that guy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good
one. And that's the thing is like, it kind of makes sense. It's a great tool, but if it's abused, not a good thing. Correct. Like if you want to say, like if you Joe go out and say, okay, I'm going to go have a couple of glasses of wine with my porterhouse steak. Joe, you don't drink much, so hey, it might be a good idea
to check this if you're going to drive home.
Exactly. Yeah. Great tool, but if misused, and trust me, I used and abused it.
Yeah.
But that being said, my difficulty really became not so much, to the best of my knowledge, using that thing all the time, I was legal going into a cockpit. Problem is not necessarily having or being intoxicated. For somebody like me, the problems really became when I wasn't drinking. The withdrawals, the fogginess, the brain fog, the shakes. That was horrible. And I back before I left Germany, I had developed some issues with my wrist and sort of like carpal tunnel, and was having a hard time with fine motor skills, and hands would shake anyway. But hey, I discovered, hey, this is nice. When I drink, it kind of all goes away, and it just became this vicious cycle. So that's what I hated the most, was just not drinking,
right?
And the effects that it was making. I couldn't understand why, it's like the character on Cougar on Top Gun. He'd lost the edge or whatever, turned in his wings. I felt like I was losing it. I just couldn't fly. I couldn't fly the airplane like I used to. I would get nervous. I would, have sort of. I had one time I had a panic attack on a check ride. It's the first check ride I'd ever, have that happen to me, and it was all part of that vicious cycle of what alcohol can do when it's, when you're self-medicating. My sponsor in AA, and I can explain the AA sponsor, but he told me, he said, there's really not one single problem, one stressor, one issue in life that alcohol won't make worse. And he's absolutely right. So when people say, I've had a stressful day or whatever, I want to, have a drink or whatever, take the edge off. Well, great. If you can do that with that one little thing, then great. But my brain doesn't work like that. And most alcoholics, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, but that was the point where I finally my rock bottom was just exhaustion.
I can't fight anymore. I'm done fighting.
Right. And it's said often in the AA circles that this is one disease that you only can beat by surrendering.
Right. And so you gave up at that point. Did you basically go to the guy that was over the HIMSS program and say,
yeah. So I told him, I said, okay, I'll go, and he said, great. It's a good thing that you're volunteering to go. There is a difference between somebody who's forced to go and someone who volunteers to enter into.
If somebody gets caught in the cockpit that's drunk or has residual alcohol issues, they're done.
Maybe, maybe not.
Depends.
Yeah. Well, so I know of, actually I know several pilots who have been caught. Not necessarily, the ones I know were not necessarily in the cockpit, but basically
on the way to the cockpit.
On the way, either stepping, through the gate, through TSA, whatever.
Right.
I know one individual who made the evening news, the national news.
Right.
They're all back flying.
Right. And the reason for this is Sun Country. I want to.
Well, those weren't Sun Country pilots, but yeah, there were.
Yes, yeah. But the point, if you look back if you go back 20, 25 years ago, or maybe even less than that, alcoholism and piloting was the kiss of death.
Right.
You had to hide it because if you got caught, you're losing your job. There's no mercy. There's no give. It was just a really bad scenario for a pilot that was back in those days.
Right.
And today it's not so. Today alcohol is just as dangerous to the public. There's no excuse for drunk driving, no excuse for drunk flying at all, period. The FAA is very, very clear about this without any question whatsoever. But there is the HIMSS program today, which is basically an out per se. It's a way, if you're willing to, if you're willing to get help, help is there.
Yes.
Help used to not be there.
Right. So a little bit of background, a little bit of history. The HIMSS, the FAA HIMSS, and it is an unfortunate acronym.
What is it?
Well, considering some other products out there.
Yes. It's got erectile dysfunction. It's not what we're
well,
talking.
I have my company's logo on my credentials lanyard, and it says him. So it says either A, I'm an alcoholic, or number 2, I've got erectile dysfunction. So whatever. I'll take either one. Doesn't matter. But so HIMSS, Human Intervention Motivational Study. Back in the 1970s, 1972, I believe. And basically it was designed specifically for, let's just say, high acuity professions, pilots in particular, who are just like any other demographic, let's say the military, a slice of the population. We deal with the same stressors as anybody else, whether you're civilian, military, airline pilot, school teacher, whatever. But the human intervention, it that makes sense. Intervene. You've heard of interventions, getting people help they need. But then that motivational study part of it is, what is the motivation? And it's very well known. We are very covetous of our wings, we protect it, right?
That's right.
And I use that word covetous is like, for those who maybe don't fly, will look at it and say, oh, that person's a pilot, I'd love to do that. What does it take? That is the motivation, is, okay, like you said, you either get help or you're not going to fly. So probably the most notable, and I'll just say that the poster child, HIMSS participant, is a gentleman named Lyle Prowse, Captain Lyle Prowse. He was a Northwest Airlines captain, flying a flight from, I believe it was from Fargo to either Minneapolis or Detroit. I can't remember exactly, but both he and the first officer were arrested and basically were off the charts, off the breathalyzer for the amount of alcohol they had consumed and were flying with. The short of that story is he was prosecuted. I think he did a bit of prison time, but ultimately, because of the HIMSS program in that process, several years later, he actually returned to work and retired, full retirement, full honors, Northwest Airlines 747 captain.
Right.
A few years ago, CBS Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley did a spot or a piece segment, on the HIMSS program and featured Captain Prowse, and it's a remarkable story. But that's really a bit of the history. That was 1990 or 1991. But it's even taken, even 20 years or so before it starts really getting hold, and airlines are starting to invest in and develop their HIMSS programs to the point to where it's I would say at our airline, it's probably one of the best in the country because we are small. It's easier for us to have the regular interactions. But even the large airlines, the Delta, United, Americans, each base may have their own HIMSS group or support network. So the program, I would say, throughout the airlines is just getting better and better, and the word is getting out. And even in the amount of time that I've been back to work, we've had several people in our airline say, yeah, I need help.
Okay.
And,
So when you say, I've got a problem, I'm joining the HIMSS program, or I'm falling on the HIMSS program, I'm going to fall on the mercy of the HIMSS program. In other words, I've got a drinking problem. I guess you got to say that.
Right.
Which means you're going to a drug and alcohol rehab.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. And it wasn't long before you were on the way.
Yeah. Correct. And I'm happy to go through the outline of the process. I think what I want, two things. I want your audience and anybody else listening, whether they're airline guys or not, a couple things. HIMSS is specifically, it's more geared towards airline or professional flying, so flying for a profession. And so the general aviation segment of the population can still benefit from the HIMSS process. It's just the infrastructure is not there for your general aviation pilot. In other words, you don't have the chief pilot that will write you a monthly report. You don't have the peer support groups who can give you those regular updates. But what you can do is, as a general aviation or a corporate or Part 135, you can mirror what the HIMSS program does for that. And so it serves as a good guide for that. But the most important thing I would say to the audience is, if you do have that breathalyzer in your backpack, or if you do think, I might be that guy, then just get help. That's the most important thing.
That's the same place where you were at, which is, am I going to lose my job?
Right.
And all that I've been hiding and now is going to be revealed. For the person that's listening to this podcast, they don't have a whole airline to help or hurt as far as that. Right. They own their own airplane. But at the end of the day, you're not going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get out of this problem. If you've got an alcohol problem, it's going to take you down. And what the FAA is interested in is you not taking an airplane down and hurting other people. Right. The public safety is what the FAA is most interested in here. Right. And in the airline world, obviously, but in our personal world, I mean, a person can make a bonehead move by going and drinking and then jumping in an airplane and really putting people in danger.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to stop that. And what it means is, if you're listening to this podcast and you've got an alcohol problem, you've got to seek help.
Just get help. Just be honest, and it's all going to work out. Because you either believe in addiction or you don't. People will often say, you've got a problem. You got to get help. Your wife, your ex-wife, your friend, your church, you're this, you've got a problem. Well, those people, okay, fine. I might have a problem. You either believe I have an addiction problem or you don't. And what I mean by that is, addiction is a real thing. Addiction sort of, it's separate from you. It was separate from me. Yes, I am the one who made a certain choices. We talked about choices recently, you and I. We make those choices, but with alcohol or with anything that's addictive, at some point, it takes over.
Makes the choice for you.
It makes
You can't put it down.
No, because when you are addicted, your body has to have it.